Probably like many of you, I was close to being overwhelmed by Ruth Bader Ginsburg's death. Not so much by the fact that she died and that she was an iconic figure and represented, to my mind, the best values of American democracy, but that the future I foresaw was quite bleak. And it occurred to me that maybe the best service that I could do today, rather than talking specifically about Buddhism, was talk from Buddhism. Talk about the view from emptiness. Talk about the view from below the personality, outside your own desires and hopes and fears and commitments. It's time for a tough appraisal. I want to read a poem by a poet I admire, although the only time we met, Leonard Cohen and I got into a sizable argument. However, notwithstanding, I think he is a brilliant writer, and this is a song he wrote called Everybody Knows. Everybody knows that the dice are loaded. Everybody rolls with their fingers crossed. Everybody knows that the war is over. Everybody knows that the good guys lost. Everybody knows the fight was fixed. The poor stay poor and the rich get rich. That's how it goes. Everybody knows. Everybody knows that the boat is leaking. Everybody knows that the captain lied. Everybody's got this broken feeling like their father or their dog just died. Everybody's talking to their pockets. Everybody wants a box of chocolates and a long-stemmed rose. Everybody knows. Everybody knows that you love me, baby. Everybody knows that you really do. Everybody knows that you've been faithful, give or take a time or two. Everybody knows you've been discreet, but there were so many people you just had to meet without your clothes. And everybody knows. Everybody knows. That's how it goes. Everybody knows. And everybody knows that it's now or never. Everybody knows that it's me or you. And everybody knows that you live forever when you've done a line or two. Everybody knows the deal is rotten. Old Black Joe's still picking cotton for your ribbons and bows. And everybody knows. And everybody knows that the plague is coming, and everybody knows that it's moving fast. Everybody knows that the naked man and woman are just a shining artifact of the past. Everybody knows the scene is dead, but there's going to be a meter on your bed that will disclose what everybody knows. And everybody knows that you're in trouble, and everybody knows what you've been through, from the bloody cross on top of Calvary to the beach of Malibu. Everybody knows it's coming apart. Take one last look at this sacred heart before it blows. And everybody knows. Everybody knows. Everybody knows. That's how it goes. Everybody knows. Oh, everybody knows. Everybody knows. That's how it goes. Everybody knows. Everybody knows. That song cuts so many ways for me. On the one hand, it kind of throws a spear through the idea of secrets. People may think things are being kept secret or things are being kept hidden. But just like when you're in a relationship and something's not right, everybody knows. Even if they don't know, they know. So to me, the everybody knows is the actual underlying motive behind the bellicosity, the animosity, the last-ditch effort to get the last nickel and dime to extract the last piece of wealth from the earth. And I'm hoping that there's a youthful divide. I'm hoping that the boomer babies, of which I'm one, I was born in 1941, that we're dying out. And the only way that I can explain the behavior of a lot of people my age is that they have given up and that they've decided to just take every last bit of their wealth and power with them and leave it to the kids and grandkids to sort it out. And in a way, I'm not so surprised by it, because the mythology of America promises individual liberty, individual freedom. Do what you want. You don't have to wear a mask. Oh, but if you don't wear a mask, you could be threatening my life. It's okay. My personal liberty. So on some degree, I feel like we've, just like when America was colonized, and we kept going west and west and west and west until we hit the Pacific Ocean. There was no place else to go, so we had to turn in. Maybe many of the most fertile places were taken. A lot of stuff was locked up, but people kept being born. We had to live on this continent. Well, I feel that way about the kind of mythology of America. I feel like there are two great social models on Earth, and one is a me model, and one is a we model. And nothing is absolute. We all have individuated consciousness. But what we don't have very much as Americans is the other half of the equation, which is that we're simultaneously me and we. And we don't like to think about the we because the we imposes limits on us. And for the kind of rough and ready pioneers, the John Waynes who settled this country, they bridle at limits. And they don't have the understanding that freedom can be found within limits. I was once working for Jerry Brown, the governor, and was running a state agency for him, and I was dating a new woman that I married who was a Zen student, and the phone rang at dinner time, and I picked up the phone and I started to talk, and I saw that she was sitting at the table waiting for me, and so I got off the phone. And she said quite simply and without any animosity, "You have a choice. You can take a phone call from the governor, or you can sit and enjoy your dinner with me." I really thought about that. So that's a limit. And if I wanted to keep a family, and if I wanted to keep the riches of a relationship and children and the responsibilities that go with that, it meant I had limits. I willingly accepted those limits. And if I didn't, it was impossible to keep the family. So the idea of freedom also came with a cost. I could be free. I could have all the lovers I wanted. I could take all the dope that I wanted. But I couldn't have a wife and a family and a life with values that would be harmonious with lives that other people were living. So I was thinking about this morning in my own zazen, and I remembered a story I read about a young man who was walking in Utah, hiking by himself. And he slipped and he got his arm wedged in a boulder, and he could not get it out. And he was there for many days. There was a movie made about this, I think. Anyway, over those 3 days, his priorities got very focused. And it came down to, was he going to live or was he going to die? And the only way he was going to live was to cut off his arm. You can't have a more serious attachment than that. And he cut off his arm with a penknife. No anesthetic, no nothing. Cut off his arm, left it wedged in a boulder in Utah, and left with his life. So I saw that today as a kind of emblem of how deeply our attachments can bind us. But when it comes down to life or death, when we look at things from the standpoint of what can kill us and what's an inconvenience, things get really clarified. And you really can see the difference between ideas and threats to your life. Now, I'm going to say some things. I don't want you to think I'm disparaging anyone's deepest beliefs. I'm not. But if someone else has an abortion, it doesn't threaten your life. It may threaten your ideas about the unborn. It may cause you discomfort, but it's not a threat to your life. And yet, on the other hand, you would have to consider, well, suppose you won. Suppose, for instance, you got all the justices you want on the Supreme Court, and they outlawed Roe v. Wade, and abortion became illegal in the United States. Would that change life in the United States? Would many children being born to mothers who didn't feel themselves adequately prepared or unable to care for them, what would the introduction of those unwanted lives do to the culture? So that's thinking both me and we. That's thinking, well, here's an example. One of my Zen teachers, Robert Aitken, used to be just irrefutably against abortion. But over time, he was so moved by the suffering of his women students that he realized he couldn't hold on to that position. So he tried to find a position that was consonant with his beliefs in Buddhism and the sacredness of all life. And what he decided was it was the woman's choice. She was carrying the child. A child is not viable without the mother. And until it's viable, I think you can make a good argument that it's the mother's choice. And what he decided was that if women chose to get an abortion, he asked them first to do a naming ceremony for the child, and then a funeral ceremony afterwards. It's tough stuff. But it sidestepped the liberal delusion that, oh, this is not murder, this is not taking a life. Yeah, it is. You're terminating something that is alive. Many of you would rescue bugs and spiders from your house and free them. Take them outside so they don't die. I do that. So there's no way that I can pretend that a fetus is not alive. But there are times when we make decisions to put one life over another. We certainly do it when we send our children to war. We certainly do it when a woman decides that she's not ready to have a child. So should she be punished for having sex or for having been raped or victim of incest? I don't want to get into the weeds of it. But I want to just point out the difference between something that will kill you and something to which you're deeply attached. Can't be more deeply attached to something than that man was to his arm. Global warming will kill us. COVID is killing us. So if someone doesn't wear a mask, they are advertising that they don't care about you. They may not know it, but that's what they're saying. They're saying my personal liberty is more important than your safety. To me, that seems like an unequal equation. Because if he's right and COVID is a hoax, we're modestly inconvenienced by wearing a mask and social distancing. But if he's wrong, he's threatening our lives or his own family's lives, things like that. So I find death is like a really useful yardstick. So when it comes to voting and when it comes to politics, the reason I call this talk "Voting is Not Wishes" is because it's really important to see things clearly. So here are some things that are clearly true. America is a two-party system. We're not a parliament. I wish we were. I think parliaments induce collaboration. They allow for much more nuanced understanding of ideas. They allow for more minuscule representation of smaller communities. But we're not. We're a two-party system. So in a two-party system, your wish to make a statement by voting for a Green Party candidate actually serves to give a vote to Donald Trump. It's admirable to want a Green Party. It's admirable to want the policies of the United States to change and include environmental considerations that if they don't, we'll die. But to see clearly, you understand it's a two-party system. And then you can ask yourself, well, who would I rather argue about the environment with? Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton? People were so angry that Hillary Clinton put her thumb on the scale of the DNC against Bernie Sanders that I read an article in the New York Times where they interviewed 15 women who voted for Trump. More than half of them had been Democrats who were so incensed at Hillary that they could not vote for her. I wonder how those people regard that choice now. So that's a wish. Our voting system is organized around money, which means money controls it, which means the people with the most money control it. So the political process is organized around that. You must be like me. You must be getting 50 emails a day begging for money. Just give us $1. We're desperate. We've got to get rid of Mitch. We've got to get rid of this one and that one. If it becomes a contest for money, we're done. We'll never raise the money of the hedge funds, the derivative traders, the real estate industry, the financial industries. We will never do it. Obama raised 40% of his campaigns on little donations. The rest was contributed by the people who should have gone to jail in 2008 for selling bad mortgages and lying about the ratings and things like that. So we have to consider that. Now, the people that are holding that wealth, that have made those decisions to die with all their toys and to protect what they have and to keep the compact that they made with blue-collar people, which is quite clear, although not clearly stated. And that compact is, we will give you white privilege. You do our dirty work. You may not get unions, but you'll be able to go anywhere, feel great, get mortgages, get your kids in better schools. You'll never have to worry about it. That's our secret gift to you. Well, the consequences of that gift are ripping the country apart. So we obviously can't stop at white blue-collar people, or we can't stop at just us rich folks, or we can't stop at just our Buddhists. There was a guy from Timor who won the Goldman Environmental Prize some years ago. It's a $250,000 prize for environmental achievement, courage, bravery, and he had just come from a huge civil war with Indonesia. The Tamil Tigers, which is an indigenous group, were being butchered by the army. It was a bloody, savage fight. And he was rewarded for environmental work to rebuild the country and take care of it. And he told the following parable, which I never forgot. He said there was once a goose with two necks, two heads. One was a long, graceful, beautiful neck, and the other was a little twisted, runty, curved neck. And the long, beautiful neck could reach up and pick the cleanest bugs off the sweetest leaves and the best flowers and the best insects, and it just had a royal life. And the little stunted neck had to eat out of the gutter. And the poisons and the toxins that it ate out of the gutter killed the goose. And his point was that the goose is the body of the earth, and that without social justice, there can be no environmental clarity. There can be no environmental justice. So it's obvious that the we has to include even the planet. So I keep thinking, what is it we can do? Violence is not going to work against the most violent nation on earth. And as a matter of fact, a lot of the violent people are siding with the personal liberty folks. They'd be just as happy to shoot people like me that got too far out of line. And certainly during the Black Lives Matter, during the protests, we has to include the merchants, the safety of the people in the community. Last week I gave you, or 2 weeks ago, I gave you my ideas for like separating the protesters from the troublemakers, coming well dressed, having monitors blow whistles and all the protesters sit down, going home at dusk, so that it becomes clear who's there for a principled reason and who's there to make trouble. Could be provocateurs, could be boogaloos, could be militias, who knows. But in every case, they're fixed ideas fighting fixed ideas. And I keep coming back to this idea of citizen. I don't know anyone the color of my toilet. I don't know anyone the color of a Lincoln Continental. Black people and white people are actually indexes of how much protection they can expect from the government. White people get it all. Black people get very little. They get less services. So it's a political marker. But by the same token, and I'll be the first to chant Black Lives Matter, it also implies a division, the same kind of division that I want to sit down and get enlightenment. I'm here and enlightenment's over there. And so what is the framework of we that will give us some clarity? And I suggest that it's citizen. I suggest one of the truest tests for a patriot and for an American is he or she willing to stand up for any citizen who's being denied their constitutional rights, not just their Second Amendment rights. If the militias were really consistent, they would be on the protest for Black Lives Matter, because they know, everybody knows. They would be standing up for women getting equal pay for equal work, because everybody knows. They would be standing up to protect the waters and the forests where they hunt and fish, because everybody knows. So there's single issue thinking is like single person thinking. Abortion is the most important issue to me. Yeah, but objectively, is it the most important issue? And who would you rather argue about it with? Would you rather debate it with people of goodwill that will sit down and talk it out? And you take the same, you know, white people were willing to let black people suffer for 200 years. Are you not willing to suffer with this a little longer? Your conscience, your struggle to keep peace rather than shoot doctors or terrorize people so that, my granddaughter has to walk past 3 foot by 3 foot signs of dead babies. We don't let her watch television because we don't want her to see certain images. And yet people can stand on the street and go to every provocative length, and so do people on the left, don't get me wrong. I'm suggesting that the single issue thinking is basically egocentric thinking, is basically this is what's important to me. That's fine. But unless that also includes how's this going to play out for everybody else? And how are my methods of achieving what I want going to play out to everyone else? Sometimes I think the only thing that will really make a change in America, that won't get lots of people killed and hurt, is a general strike where everybody just stops playing. They don't shop, they don't buy new things. Eventually, maybe they don't even pay rent. I don't know. There wouldn't be enough police to evict everybody if everyone did it. But it wouldn't take so long before the stock market and the owners of industry began to complain that nothing's working. Because if you think about it, really, a consumer society is a one-way valve. It funnels all the money of working people into the pockets of people that make things, that own the factories, that own the stuff. It's inequitable on its face. It wouldn't be if those people paid taxes. But the wealth that they get gives them the political power to avoid paying taxes. And so without taxes, there are no good schools in certain neighborhoods. There is no daycare for working mothers. There is no medical care for everyone. The same thing with the military. Just read in the paper yesterday that $1 billion was given to the Pentagon to make masks. And they spent it on jet engines and military weaponry. Well, the U.S. military budget is as big as the next 7 largest military budgets in the world. Really? Does it have to be that big? Is it any jet plane or battleship protecting us against COVID? Really? Suppose it was only 4 times as big as China, Germany, France, England. 4 times that size. That would leave billions and billions, trillions of dollars to take care of the country and the people in it, to take some of the weight off people who are terrified of their jobs, who have no jobs, who receive no money for retraining. Globalism may make sense. May make sense to grow corn where corn grows best, to make widgets where making widgets is best. But not to foresee that that's going to cause great dislocation and discomfort is a failure of leadership. And America currently spends less on retraining its workers for those dislocations than any industrial country on earth. And we wonder why people are angry. So how big, I used to say to friends, do you have a number when you're working? Do you have a number where you can stop? I have a friend who's a very rich man, and he recently made a big $12 million sale. He sold his business, and he's making readjustments, and we were eating together, and he was heartbroken because he had to fire an employee that he'd had for 30 years that he adored and loved. And I said, why'd you have to fire him? My friend's in his mid-80s. I said, why'd you have to fire him? I said, you have $12 million. He said, yeah, but one catastrophic illness could take it all. Well, fear will make it so that you never have enough. You'll never have an upper limit. You can always imagine something that you need another $10,000 for. And that might not be so crazy, except if you Google it, you'll see that 69% of Americans do not have $1,000. So think of the implications of that. So where is that money? They can't afford an ambulance. They can't afford one big car bill. They're done. It's the difference between income and wealth. Lots of people have an income, but they don't have wealth. So when I was a kid, the average salary of an executive was about 40 times greater than that of a mid-level employee. So there were rich people. My dad was a rich guy. Of course, above a certain amount, let's say $2 million or something, 90% of that money went back to the government. And that's where America built its railroads and its subways and its ports and its computers and its medical research and its telephone systems that made itself the envy of the world. But as people got richer, they used that wealth to buy more political power, not through democracy, just legal bribery, lobbyist. If I give you $25,000, you will always answer my phone call. That's our system. I don't know how we change it politically, but I do know that that's the Gordian knot. Well, today the multiple of an executive's salary is between 400 and 700 times. So all that money that's not going to working people is making them work harder, longer, live more precariously, be more desperate. So in the final analysis, how safe is the world going to be for those people with all that wealth who are putting it into derivatives and putting it into hedge funds and making more money, but generating nothing? They've abandoned the we. They're stuck in self-centered, egocentric thinking. And it's not that it's not human and not natural to do that. But spiritual maturity, any kind of maturity, involves seeing the big picture clearly and accounting for those we live with. All those rich people use our legal system, use our education system, use the highways, use the police, use the fire departments, use the social stability of America, use the wealth of its natural resources, but they don't want to pay for their share of the country club. It's like saying, I don't play squash. Take the upkeep off my tab. That's not we thinking. And so the space we're in, and everybody knows, is like the final toxic blossom of egocentric thinking. It's not that ego by its own existence is toxic or bad. Hell, it helps us brush our teeth, take care of our bodies, cross on the green. No, it's egocentricity without limits. Capitalism could work with limits. Any political system that was operated with restraint, with compassion, and with nuance for individual differences could work. Intellectual rigidity, ideological rigidity just stops it all. So you can't play basketball without rules. You can't play football without rules. So we are learning the hard way that you can't have capitalism without rules, because it only works for the 1/10 of 1%. Everyone else is sucking hind tit, as we used to say, about the runt of the litter. So I don't know what we're going to do exactly, but I do know that the darker the moment gets, the more important it is to have people who see clearly, who are relaxed, who are in control of their anger, who are thinking of others. They become really valuable. And all of you who are meditating and practicing compassion and kindness will become increasingly valuable. And then we have to think about not only what we want, but how we're going to achieve it. And if we do it in a way that heightens the contradictions, as Marx used to say, or Mao used to say, we're going to try to punish rich people. I don't want to live in a world without rich people. But I want rich people to live in a world in which they understand their interdependence with everybody else. So I'm just bringing this up because I think we're at the end of a kind of road, and I think the future is going to be very difficult for liberal people. But as Mitt Romney said yesterday, it's not written in the stars that the Supreme Court has to be a liberal institution. Those are our ideas. Those are what we're attached to. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't be attached to them, but we need to recognize that we are attached to them and that other people aren't. And our victories and our defeats will depend on how skillfully and how kindly and how compassionately we deal with those other people. We don't know their motives. It's so easy to make an assumption that you know the motive of somebody. You only know what they do. If they confess their motives, if they're caught on tape, that's something else. Anyway, I wanted to raise this subject because we're not going to stop a Supreme Court appointment. And we're in this position because Harry Reid ended the filibuster, changing it from a supermajority to a majority. And then Mitch McConnell extended it to the Supreme Court. So temporary victories have a way of kicking back. I don't know if we should pack the court or not. In the short term, probably makes sense. You could gamble on young people being wiser and hipper and more liberal. But I'm old enough to have seen the best ideas turned around a number of times, so I'm a little cautious. I keep thinking the root of it all in a consumer society is to stop shopping. Buy used stuff, trade stuff, barter stuff, give it away, and make it an act of compassionate protest. And I don't predict it will take long before it's noticed. Anyway, that's enough for this morning. Sorry to be so heavy. I'm going to say the metta prayer. May all beings be filled with loving kindness. May all beings be free from suffering. May all beings be happy and at peace. May all beings be filled with loving kindness. May all beings be free from suffering. May all beings be happy and at peace. May all beings be filled with loving kindness. May all beings be free from suffering. May all beings be happy and at peace. Thank you all for showing up. I hope you come back.